Hi, I'm looking today at McLaren Vale Syrah or Shiraz, and before we start, I just wanted to discuss the difference between Syrah and Shiraz in Australia. So obviously they're both exactly the same grape, there's no difference, but it does indicate a stylistic divide between the two camps. So Syrah is often postured as being a more elegant style of wine. They might use more whole bunches in the ferment. There might be a lesser proportion or less obvious impact of oak. They may use other fermentation vessels, amphoras, eggs, whatever you want. And the fruit may be grown in a cooler area. So these are more elegant styles of wine. And it is for sure and certain that if you see Syrah on a label, the winemaker is making a point of telling you, the drinker, that this is the path that they have gone down. The more challenging thing to understand is Shiraz, because Shiraz has been applied. It is the name of the grape. It has been applied to all of the Shiraz wines made in Australia forever, but it has really only in the last 10 or so years, give or take, been applied to wines that are bigger, more heavily extracted, perhaps grown in a warmer area, perhaps there is more obvious oak. There may not be the impact of like whole bunch or carbonic maceration or anything that the fresher Syrah styles might use. So these are complicated because if you see Syrah, you can be certain that the winemaker is probably saying to you, this is an elegant wine and we may have done one or many of these things. If you see Shiraz, you don't know, because it may be that the producer is saying, yes, we have subscribed to all of these bigger, warmer, fuller-bodied, richer characters, or they might just not have made a decision and they may be in the middle. So it can be a little ambiguous, and certainly there is no definition around it, so it can be challenging for drinkers. But that's essentially what we need to know about the two styles. So on the table, we have some Shiraz and we have some Syrah, and starting with wine number one. So this is from Bondar. So Andre and Selena Bondar make this incredible wine. It's from the Rayner Vineyard. This, when I opened it, was really closed and quite caged in by I'm guessing whole bunch component. In the nose now, it's got dark chocolate, mulberries, licorice, like it's really kind of opening up and beginning to flower. It's been in the glass about 45 minutes now, I suppose. In the mouth, this is bright, textural, it's got savoury fruit, it's got sweet fruit, and it's got very, very fine tannins that shape it through the finish. The vineyard's in Blewett Springs, and you get this gorgeous kind of freshness through the back palate, which lifts the whole thing and makes me think that probably an hour or so in a decanter will absolutely allow this to open up and flower. It's a beautiful wine, and only getting better as we go. Moving into the second glass, we've got the Bekkers McLaren Vale Syrah 2020. So Toby Bekkers and his wife Emmanuel are brilliant people. Toby is the viticulturalist and Emmanuel is the winemaker, and they both share both roles because in a business that's what you have to do, but that is their areas of expertise. And they were incredibly kind to me when I was in the McLaren Vale in terms of explaining the lay of the land and being very open about answering all of my questions that I had about producers and style and all of the good things that we ask when we're there. So this wine, when you take those, wine is about people, by the way. The makers resemble their wines. It's very important to understand that. Even though we only, as a reviewer, I only review what's in the glass, it's important to take into context the people that made it because they do shape the direction that the wine takes. And I think it's very important to understand that. So the Bekkers are, I feel in terms of knowledge and experience and capability, are people that you can really put your faith in. And I think that's very important, certainly as a reviewer, but as a drinker as well. I want to know that. So this is like velvety and lush. There's peppered raspberry and there's mulberry and cassis. It's very appealing on the nose, let me tell you, but it only gets better in the mouth. I mean, this is elegant, sophisticated, weaving, curving Syrah. This is a beautiful wine, and I know from experience that this wine opens up over time. You need to decant this wine because that crack of tannin needs to open and the fruit just blossoms out from it. And if you think that you don't need to decant it, just put it in the glass and wait for it, because I can confirm it will open up incredibly. The Bekkers wines are really special, and I think 19 is in market at the moment, and if you haven't tried them already, I would recommend them. But do a bit of research on the people first, because it will help you to understand just how beautiful and exciting these wines are. Moving into the third glass. So this is a brand that I've been following for some time. I studied my WSET 3 like 10 years ago, maybe 9 years ago. And in my class was a guy called Brett, and Brett owns In Praise of Shadows, which is this brand. And I have loved over the years the Grenache particularly. I bought a lot of the 2018 Grenache from McLaren Vale. It's excellent. And so this Blewett Springs Syrah, or Shiraz, labelled Shiraz, but I would say, I mean, it's 13 something percent. There's a real green stick character, which means to me that it's had an earlier pick, which means I'm probably going to get really beautiful, lively acid, soft fruit, and really chalky tannins. That's my prediction for this wine. And I can confirm that's absolutely what I'm getting. If I was Brett, I'd be labelling this Syrah. It's crunchy, it's silky, it's fresh, it's spicy, it's a little bit sappy. This is a really exciting and delicious wine, and value for money too. These are like $35 or $40 and really give you a lot of pleasure. So if you haven't tried In Praise of Shadows, I'd give it a crack. The Grenache is also excellent, although I haven't looked at this vintage, but I have asked for a bottle, so we'll see. Now up here, so in terms of McLaren Vale, you've got the coast, the Gulf of St Vincent, which comes in, like the lay of the land is the McLaren Vale Flats, and you come up the hills, you get into the Blewett Springs dunes, effectively. They're not dunes, they're up in the hills, but they've got this real soft kind of rolling aspect, and sand. Blewett Springs is famous for its sand. You go further up the hill and you get Clarendon. So Clarendon Hills, the winery, you can understand why they may have called it that when you get there, because it is more dramatic. The Onkaparinga Gorge winds its way through. It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful area, and that is where the Hickinbotham Vineyard is in Clarendon. Now, I was very, very impressed with these wines. I tasted with Chris Carpenter, who's the American winemaker. He lives in Napa and works in Napa for the Jackson family, who own Hickinbotham, Yangara, Giant Steps, etc. So he's in charge of making the Bordeaux varietals in Clarendon, and Pete Fraser, the winemaker at Yangara, makes the Shiraz. So it was a really interesting discussion that I had with him about stylistic differences in terms of where they both come from and the styles of wine that they make and that they enjoy making. But I found the wines, even though they were made by two different people, to be incredibly elegant and restrained. These are not lush, fruit-driven, big wines that, bulbous, and we're going to get to a wine that will satisfy that if that's what you're into. These are restrained, savoury, tannin-driven wines that I think will last for a very long time. And we looked at, Chris was just about to release the 2014, so the 2020s are in market now, or coming into market now, just being released. And they do a museum release, and they were doing the 2014s, and Charlie Seppelt made the Rhone varieties for the 14 tranche, and Chris obviously made the Bordeaux varietals. These are excellent wines, and actually I think I pointed them slightly higher than the 20s because they had developed this gorgeous savoury complexity, but were still very fresh. So it's enough for me. They were very, very exciting, and quality just laced through everything they do. It's just unavoidable quality left, right and centre. So this wine is red currants, it's savoury, there's pomegranate, there's salted mulberry, red licorice, clove bud. It's delicious and very different to these vibrant, springy, buoyant, luscious, plush, sophisticated styles. This is this is much more middle palate and savoury. I really love that, and I could drink each of these in all of the different contexts. But I just love the restraint and the elegance of these Hickinbotham wines. They are very smart. Now, moving into the final wine, this is the Blue Eyed Boy 2020 from Mollydooker. And I really wanted to get to Mollydooker, mainly because I really don't understand the wines before I got there. And I'm going to tell you a story, because when I got to Mollydooker, I wanted to meet with Sarah Markey. And I just wanted to talk to her. I didn't want to taste. I have the wines I can taste on my own. What I wanted to do was understand her philosophy, because they have a very specific philosophy at Mollydooker, and I wanted to live it for a bit before I tasted the wines. And I'm really glad I did, because it's going to let me explain this to you much, much better. But basically, the thing I think that's important to me as a reviewer is the fruit intensity, the oak regime, and the watering regime in the vineyard. So these are high alcohol, full throttle, big, full-bodied wines. They are big. This is 16% alcohol. It is full of flavour, like it floods your mouth. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the oak regime. So Syrah only uses American oak, and a lot of it. A lot of it. We walked into the barrel hall, and I just walked through the door. I hadn't even looked up. I was still looking at my feet as I was stepping over the threshold, and I was like, American oak, only American oak. It's immaculate, by the way. The cellar is immaculate, and that was another thing that made a big impact on me, was how ordered and clean and perfect it was. But there are hundreds of barrels stacked up on top of each other, and actually she took us up onto this gangplank so that I could look back over the barrel hall and see just how big it was, and it was massive. So that's the second thing. These wines are all American oak, and that's abundantly obvious on the nose and in the mouth. And the last thing is the watering program in the vineyard. So they do something very different to the other producers around them, and they water in this very specific and staggered kind of starve, feed program throughout the growing season. And it's essentially to push back the sugar ripening, but to allow the flavour ripening to occur. Now, these are still very high alcohol wines, so there is sugar ripening happening at that time, but they're intense and they're full, and that's her style, and she does it well. So these wines, I have to tell you, they're a bit big for my style, but if you like full-bodied wines and you like that creamy, kind of soft, spicy oak character, you're going to love them. And she does it well. And I'm not here to tell you that it's not good because it's not done well. It's done very well. It's just not my style, but it's done very well. And she's very popular for a very obvious reason here. So this is, apart from the coconut and the coconut from the American oak, this is all about dark chocolate, raspberries, mulberries, licorice, there's tar, there's blood plum, there's all sorts of big, rich flavours. And it gives you that in the mouth. This is a Shiraz. I would say this is a Syrah, this is a Syrah, this is a Syrah, this is a Syrah. And this is up for contention. And if you have any feelings about it, I'd really like to hear them in the comments below. Otherwise, happy drinking. There's a lot of diversity in a very, very beautiful region called McLaren Vale. Drink up.